Okay, so hi everybody, it's March 21st. This is a Catalyst Circle working group. We've got apologies from Melanie and Alex. I believe Alex is at the Paris Blockchain Week, and Melanie is otherwise predisposed. So it's a tight quorum. Patrick, Hosky, Nebia, and Darlington. And then we've invited Danny and Lucio to join us. Lucio's going to be giving some context and giving a bit of a demonstration on some ideas around the review stage. But just to sort of level set, I'm going to share my screen and my slides, and we'll just have a very, very quick recap. So last time we met, we talked a little bit about some of the what's going on there? Some of the proposed adaptations to the Catalyst protocol, and some of the ideas around how we can improve the voter experience and encourage them to make more data-driven decisions, and showed off some UI changes around the voting application, and disaggregating or breaking down the different proposal submission criteria, impact, feasibility, and whatnot, into 3 very distinct scores that are displayed in the voting app. And we also talked about how these scores aren't actually going to be priming the voter, and will not be displayed in the top level displays. So you'll have no idea what the proposal actually scored, and they're not going to be rank ordered from the highest star rated scoring to the lowest. The intention is to present a random selection of the proposals in that challenge, or a random order, and then for the voters to read the proposal and then expand around the community reviews, and then learn what the community reviewers' opinions are of those proposals, and then the scoring that they attribute to it. Largely, everybody seemed to think that was a change for the benefit better, and for the benefit of the voter. And today, what I wanted to do is to take us through some of the changes that we would like to propose to the other part of the review stage, the actual doing of reviews, and the incentive structure that supports that. So without further ado, I'll sort of dive in. So again, just to sort of recap, our intention is to build the future together. A Catalyst is moving beyond an experiment towards a more mature community-driven innovation engine. And we talked about last week as well an idea of how we could imagine Circle evolving, and in so much as today it's very much, you know, the pulse of Catalyst. I intended to be a bridge between groups, the pulse being, you know, ears to the ground, understanding some of the perspectives and viewpoints and suggestions and concerns that the community might have for different aspects of Catalyst, and then where we can see this, you know, this is then channeling in up to Circle, and then being discussed in these sorts of Circle meetings. And we certainly, as a group, I believe, feel like there's an opportunity to, in the future, start presenting proposals on how specific changes can be made. And then there's this idea of technical committees, where you could imagine that a proposal might be made, a decision may be required, but perhaps those that are proposing or making the decisions aren't the subject matter experts, and so a call for subject matter experts could be requested, and then a panel of people put together to evaluate the merits and trade-offs of a given proposal. So yeah, we can certainly imagine that there's going to be more of a role to be played by Circle representatives, and this is just one way. But as I said, for today, I'd really like to spend and double click on the community review stage, Oh, we also talked about last week this idea of the milestone-based module or milestone-based funding, and the associated milestone-based module, whereby this will really support project accountability management and provide a common tool for funded projects, their teams, and then the community reviewers, verifying that milestones are being made and met and achieved, and also the Catalyst team to all commonly use and share a similar interface or the same interface and the same solution to be able to administer projects. And then this will also have a side benefit of helping to automate funding operations, whereby the outputs of all of this activity on the milestone module of submitting evidence, verifying and checking that the evidence meets the deliverables proposed in the statement of milestones, and then signing off on that. The outputs of that creates funding files that are much easier to administer. They aren't subject to human error, that should make the operations and fund distribution pathway a lot more efficient. But again, come back to the focus of today. We do want to talk about community review. So just to sort of level set, I want us to recap on where we are today. So there's been some feedback that over the past months, and the intention is to take aboard all that feedback, whether it's in workshops like this, one-to-ones that we've been holding, or inputs from surveys and just the general social media space. And these are 4 really key problems to try to address. We've just talked about the UI of the voting application, and the idea that the star rating has a direct impact on voters' final decisions, and that it's also really difficult for voters to navigate through many proposals. And I hope that with these UI changes that we proposed last time, which are sort of list. Oh, sorry, we'll come back to that. But these changes that are being made and proposed would address these top 2 squares here, so points 1 and 2. But then there's the other side of the coin, and the 2 main drivers of concern is that the incentive structure for participating as a proposal assessor or as a veteran proposal assessor is really unpredictable. And as a result, that means that for a lot of people, I'm not saying all, but for some people at least, they optimize their efforts to try to receive as much rewards as possible. And there are a few ways that are reasonable to be able that don't take too much effort, a reasonable amount of effort to be able to adopt, and then you're sort of optimizing for receiving as much rewards as possible. So for example, if you in previous schema, if you were to give your proposal you're reviewing 5 stars, and that was to be one of the ones that was voted on and approved, because you reviewed an approved project for funding, then you are part of a bonus in the scheme, and you'll receive an extra reward for that proposal of being voted through. So the logic there would be, well, if I'm a reviewer, an assessor, I should just give as many proposals really high scores as possible, because law of averages, some of them, if not a lot of them, are going to stick. And that's not the behavior that we really want to encourage. And so we'll talk about some of these changes in a moment. And then the other key point is that I think we've come to become aware that the assessment process is vulnerable to behavior that is undesirable. And so we want to address this with the changes as part of Fund 10, or the proposed plan for Fund 10. And we also need to acknowledge, I think, that there's only so much that can be done. And this might not be the panacea to the problem immediately, entirely, but I would like feedback on whether we believe as a group this is on the right path. Okay, so what does this really sort of mean? Well, As a starting point, I think assess QA, as it's been commonly known for previous funding rounds, we need to change this idea. We maybe move to a naming convention around this idea of community review, and the objective of the community review stage is to provide insightful data for the community to help to make decisions. So we want to provide data rather than pre-chewed decisions. And I think if you're a voter, what we learned over a lot of the discovery in the past weeks and months is that a lot of voters actually believe that the reviewers, the assessors, are experts. And we know that that's just not to be the case. I mean, there's a lot of people that have a lot of expertise in their own domains, that could be technical or otherwise. But the Catalyst proposal assessment process is permissionless currently. So you don't necessarily need any expertise to participate in the review. And so we think that there's a lot of value in people still being able to provide opinions. And so we want to be able to make sure that that's a kind of core tenet and sentiment, that opinions matter, people's reviews matter, but this isn't necessarily an assessment or an evaluation of the feasibility of the proposal, because any given proposal might be being reviewed by people that aren't subject matter experts. So it's difficult for them to give a deep and discrete evaluation based on their own expertise if they're not necessarily fully equipped to be able to do that analysis and evaluation job. But that said, people's opinions do matter, and so this sort of data is still useful and helps to provide a level of information to voters that they can choose to take inputs from or make their own decisions entirely. Okay, so what does this mean in practice? Well, we've already sort of said that the star rating is going to have an impact, and so the changes that we're looking to make are removing these star ratings from the voting application. I've already mentioned this today already, but as you can see, there's no star rating in the UI. There's also different filters that you can filter by your own preferences in order to be able to sort the proposals in a way that you would like. And as you can see, as it sort of showed there, the different criterion are broken down. So we've covered that off. So where do we want to go next? Okay, moving forward. Okay, so I want to get into the detail. And there's a couple of slides here. So this idea of changing to community review, this review stage is still intends to remain permissionless, meaning anyone can participate. But for Fund 10, we propose introducing levels to reviewers. And this will really be a primer and an enabler before we can introduce decentralized identities and verifiable credentials. So you could imagine in the not too distant future, certainly after Fund 10, that there would be the potential to introduce credentialing so that reviewers and subject matter experts can be more easily attributed and have their skills attributed, and then maybe present this information back to voters that so many proposals in a particular technical vertical were reviewed by so many number of technically competent reviewers, right? But again, that shouldn't necessarily discount or totally preclude other people's opinions. But what we don't think is a good model anymore is this idea that the veteran proposal assessors were then taking the reviews of other community members and making a judgment as to whether that review is excellent, good, or should be filtered out. So we propose making a really simple change that either the proposal review is counted in or out. And the general rule of thumb should be that almost everything should be counted as in, because it's not someone's opinion, it's their perspective, it's their point of view. But where it would be flagged is it is around some scripts we'll talk about in a minute. But we will also provide reviewers, whether you're a new reviewer or experienced reviewer, with objective criteria. And then I think the part of the main point of this is also that a reviewer should be providing their own sovereign opinion, so their own individual personal opinion. So if you're providing 50 different accounts and you're using some sort of bot or AI or script to pre-populate those reviews with 50 different accounts worth of reviews, well, that's not really your own sovereign opinion, really. That's you're outsourcing that to an AI. So that shouldn't. We propose that maybe shouldn't be something that's that's encouraged. But how do we want to create these different tiers or these different levels? Well, we come up with these working names of level 0, level 1, and level 2, and they are very simply: level 0 are new new reviewer IDs, those that are new to Catalyst and the community review, or that haven't achieved a certain number of reviews. So they've only done say 5 reviews or a small number. And so this ranking is really determined by: are you new? Is this a new ID? Is this a new reviewer ID? Or have you done under a certain threshold of reviews? If you're above that threshold, then you're effectively a level 1 reviewer. So you've got more experience, you've been through the process at least once, hopefully more, and have a good handle on what should constitute as expected behaviors within this process. And then there's this idea of level 2s, which essentially looks to replace the role of the veteran proposal assessor, and they will be there to moderate flags. So before the VPAs are given opportunity to do their work, we will be deploying, or intend to and propose to deploy, a number of scripts that analyze the reviews of the level 0s and level 1s, and they are reviewing, these scripts are reviewing for a similarity analysis, profanity analysis, plagiarism. So how, in terms of similarity, how similar is this review to previous funding rounds efforts? Is it like for like? Is it within a small percentage of similar of uniqueness, or is it predominantly a copy and paste from a previous review, or entirely copy and paste? Profanity, obviously, we want to encourage proposers to feel like their ideas are important, and that they shouldn't be subject to rudeness. And then plagiarism, so similar to the similarity script, this is looking at the internet, and has this information, this review, been copy and pasted from somewhere else in the internet. And then there's this other script that we're looking to suggest to introduce, which analyzes a review for the use of AI. I think we can all be accepting that there is this innovation called ChatGPT in the world now, and so rather than being spammed with hundreds of thousands of reviews from an AI bot, just kind of counter to the idea of a sovereign opinion, we think that there's an opportunity to at least be able to raise a flag and then ask for these level 2 reviewers to make a judgment as to whether or not to include a proposal review, a community review that's been flagged for one of these these script ideas, and or whether to include it. So I want to pause there just for a second and just get some initial feedback, thoughts and feelings, and forgive me if I've not been so verbose or articulate. I'm pretty tired, but need to get some inputs. Go for it, Hosky.
Regarding the levels, what's stopping somebody with the new system from just creating 50 accounts and leveling them all up as it was done in the past?
Sure. So there's, I mean, it's the incentive to do so, right? Like, what are you going to get as a result of that? And I'll go on to another slide in a moment, which maybe will address that point. But is it worthwhile to spend all of that effort to create, dozens, if not hundreds, of new accounts? And if that incentive is monetary and financial, then what can we do to combat or make it not worthwhile? So we'll come on to that in the next slide. I know that doesn't answer your question immediately, but the idea of, like, how do we make it not worthwhile to do so? Patrick?
So actually, let's have Nebio go first, because I kind of got my question answered already, and I forgot what my second question was.
A very quick question. I was curious, is there a leveling down of levels as well? Like, if, I don't know, a level 2 is flagged, does he go down to a level 1 or a level 0?
It's a really good question. I mean, what should be the consequence of being found to be using AI or something like that? That's something that, yeah, I mean, we haven't catered for that within this scheme so far, but it's definitely an open question, and I'm going to make a note of that, and let's discuss it for sure. Should I go through the next slide that will help to maybe unpack Hosky and Patrick's idea?
One last question before that. Do you have a concrete plan for digital identity connections, or is that just like, I feel like we're always, when we're talking about governance, are talking about, okay, at some point DITs are coming, but like, is there a plan to do that?
Well, I mean, to talk very broadly about this idea, Atala Prism 1.4, which has been the version to date, that's the progress that they've made so far, has some limitations. So there's some issues around interoperability and portability of those credentials. And the Atala Prism V2, their next release, which is basically almost ready, it's basically there. And they've already started the beta program for Atala Prism Pioneers. That will be moving things onto V2. So yes, we're absolutely in discussion with the Atala team. But yeah, obviously it's not an overnight implementation, is it? And yeah, we can certainly imagine there and have a vision and a plan to include credentialing. It's more like a timing, and it requires obviously significant development and testing. And if you could imagine this type of scheme where we've got these level 0s, 1s, and 2s, even with this idea of skills attribution or subject matter experts, you need interoperability and portability of those credentials to some extent, right? It's almost, it's somewhat useful, but it's not as useful if it's only related to and useful within Catalyst, right?
Yeah, that's very, very true, I guess. But honestly, it's kind of frustrating. I mean, we launched digital identities like almost a year ago, or more than a year ago, for NFTs, and we forced Atala Prism's hand by, just releasing the standard basically, because they wanted to wait and wait and wait. And then once we released it, they said, okay, now we're going to support it. And it just takes so much time, and it's not that hard to do. Like, in all seriousness, it's not that hard to do. And there are other providers than Atala Prism. And I know, you work for IOG, and we're kind of probably bound to that. But it would be nice if we can just do it, because it's really like if we tell IMX to do that, we're gonna have it in 2 weeks if we want to. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating, but yeah, I hope Atala Prism 2 comes out soon, and then hopefully we can have something.
Danny?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that point that I think our collective aim coming out of the Project Catalyst team is not to tie certain services or products directly to the core of the Project Catalyst. And I think that will probably be that's the biggest fundamental piece that we're currently missing, of having a ground framework, Catalyst standards that we need to adhere to. That then basically, if you want, you create an environment for people to plug into. So in a similar way, how today Catalyst as an ecosystem doesn't care which wallet implements, for example, registrations for the Catalyst rounds. It could be also the case that in the future, where we're trying to gravitate towards, it's no longer the case that there's only one provider and that's it, how it works. The premise and the ethos of how Project Catalyst team specifically is driving these initiatives forward is to build it in as much of an agnostic way as possible, that through the introduction of Catalyst standards that we as an ecosystem, as a community, agree to adhering them to, then it's up to those who are willing to meet that standard and implement those solutions. So it means that Patrick might have a favorite, the DID solution. Chris might have another favorite DID solution. Hosky might have something else. And in that matter, as long as it's meeting those Catalyst standards, we wouldn't differentiate where they're coming from. And I think a lot of the information and framework will be coming forward in coming weeks and laying sort of the foundation, like how can we reorganize Catalyst in such a way that it creates the framework where it becomes like a Lego. As long as we're following the right standards that we agree as a community, what can we plug in? So that's probably the most exciting part to me personally, and I know a lot of us on the team feel the same way. So essentially, it's not locking us to any specific outcome, but really opening up, because that actually drives innovation. That little of what you think you hinted upon, like the competitive spirit, that's actually very helpful, and it will help us speed up that innovation. So just giving you a heads up that it's every intention by the Catalyst team to actually build a product in such a way that it's agnostic and we can be playing Lego around it and modularizing it in a way that makes the most sense and efficiency.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much time here, but can I just try to get an understanding, like what part of this is actually, on chain? So if I submit the proposal to be voted on, do I sign that with my wallet in the future and put it on chain? And if I, as someone who assesses this proposal, do I put that on chain as well? Because if we do that, it would be extremely easy to just integrate like whatever we want, basically.
Sure. I think we need to be realistic and conscientious of the timeframes to do all this, right? So we are going to be using idea scale.
Okay.
So the proposal submission is not on chain.
Okay, fair enough.
For Fund 10, this idea of community review and changing the structure and the approach will be supported with new tools, and then you can imagine that beyond Fund 10, in Fund 11, Fund 12, then we'll be working within a different interface or a different set of a more of a unified approach, right? And at that point, then these enablers like DIDs or on-chain and signed proposal submissions, they become a bit easier. But at the moment, because we're constrained to our front end and our platform for managing innovation, there's a limitation there. But that's not to say that that's how it's going to be for too much longer. Okay,
that's very good. Yeah. The moment most of the stuff is on chain is the moment where we can open it up to like everyone in a way, and that becomes really cool, because then we can say that I can say as a developer, I'm just going to write a CIP and I'm just going to propose a DID standard and I'm gonna do that with, you know, someone else than a Thaler Prism if they're not fast enough, or I'm gonna do it with a Thaler Prism, or they propose their own standard or whatever. And then, you know, it's up to the wallets and the websites and so on to follow that standard or not. But at least I, as a proposer, have the chance to say, okay, I am going to use this, or I'm not going to use this. And that's kind of what's missing. And then also another important point, also what is really getting better at that point is that we open up the tooling so much more, because everyone can make their own assessment website if they don't agree with the assessment, you know. So like everyone can say, okay, I'm just gonna randomize it, or I'm just gonna, I don't know, let the largest NFT backholders assess stuff, or whatever random stuff they can think of. And then, you know, that's really decentralization. That would be really cool. So I would push hard for that, to be honest. But yeah.
Appreciate that, Patrick. Really good input. Okay, I'm going to drive on. So we want to tackle this idea around incentivization and trying to make the distribution of work more equitable. So just to sort of level set again, in previous funding rounds, 4% of the budget has been allocated for these reviews, and then what was the VPA's role, up 1% of the budget was typically allocated. So what we're intending on suggesting and proposing is that rather than it being a hard and fast 4% or 1%, we're suggesting that up to this amount can be spent. And the reason for that is that by saying up to rather than, you know, an entirety of the budget, if we have to share the budget amongst an unknown number of assessors and assessments, it's really difficult to put any sort of specifications as to what the rate per review would be. So just to talk through this very, very quickly, the main thrust is this predictable reward per review rate for level 1 reviewers. So level 1 reviewers, remember, they're a bit more experienced. They've, you know, there's a certain threshold of performance that they've achieved prior to this. So we come with some level of confidence that they're able to do the job. And ultimately, the job is provide an opinion based on, you know, the proposal and the proposal submission criteria, and give the proposal a score based on your opinion and provide some feedback. So we are suggesting that this amount is sort of set at $12 an ADA per review, and that you will be paid to deliver. The idea is that you deliver up to 80 reviews, and you'll be guaranteed to be paid $12 per review in ADA for up to 80, which means it's about, give or take, $1,000 worth of rewards that could be received per level 1 reviewer. And then we've got this idea of the level knots. So the way that we're looking at this is that of this up to 4% budget, and let's just say it's just for hypothetical numbers' sake, let's just say this number is 100,000 whatevers, and that's the 4%. 80% of that 100,000 will be allocated towards this fixed reward for each review for level 1. And the remaining 20% is a shared pot, a shared pool that's shared between the level 0s. So if you're a new assessor, or a new reviewer, or you establish a new reviewer ID, or you haven't done, say, 20 reviews in previous rounds, under 20 reviews cumulatively, then you will share a reward based on the volume of reviews and reviewers within this level 0. So it's an 80-20 pool. The 80% is fixed, the 20% is variable. So, you know, to combat this idea of, you know, how do we alleviate someone from just setting up a whole bunch of spam accounts and you know, conducting a level 0 review 50 times across 50 different accounts? Well, the more reviewers that are in that pool, the less the reward per review is. So the more you game the system, the less worthwhile it is to do so. So our idea here is that we put in a reasonable threshold of how many reviews a level 0 should be able to accomplish, and that we don't want it to be that there's absolutely no rewards for them, but we're suggesting that for new reviewers that maybe maximum $6 in ADA per review is reasonable. And then we can somewhat try to think of this idea for level 2s and VPAs, or what was VPAs, but calling now level 2s, to be also variable, because at this stage we don't know how many flags are going to be raised. We don't know how many proposal reviews are going to be within this flagging system, and so it's really difficult to be able to put on a fixed number. But judging by the rewards received in previous VPA rounds or in previous funding rounds where VPAs have worked, this idea of the moderator role and just being able to then take a look at whether or not you think the review feedback is legitimate, or whether it's been raised rightly as a flag by the scripts, and then making a judgment whether to include it or not. That should be pretty low bar work. And so, we're sort of suggesting that around about $1 in ADA per review flag is reasonable. Again, these are all beginning to become new parameters, and these can be up for discussion and refinement for sure. My suggestion is that we have a bit of a talk about the general scope of this, and then what I'd like to do is I'd like Lucio to also to jump in a second. I've got one more slide that I want to show, and then we sort of go through a little exercise where we're looking at a simulation and what it might mean for scores and whatnot. Someone put their hand up.
Yeah, me. But if it's not fitting for that and you want to continue first, that's also fine.
What was the question? Because I might cover it.
The question was, do you have data on how much time it takes one person on average to review like one proposal? Like, is it an hour work or half an hour or 15 minutes?
It could be variable, right? If you're trying to optimize for quantity, you could very simply give everything 5 stars, write a couple of lines, copy and pasta. That's 30 seconds.
It seems like it just seems like that maybe $12 per review is a little bit high. I don't know, but to me it seems high, and I can already see people who abuse ChatGPT to do reviews.
Yeah, well, that's why there are APIs available that is able to give you an indication as to whether or not an AI has been used.
Yeah, maybe for the next, I don't know, 2 months until the next ChatGPT comes out. That's not really sustainable long term, I think. But
maybe. I mean, again, these are proposed changes for front end.
Yeah, makes sense.
And again, we're trying to respond to community suggestions and concerns with something that can be implemented within a reasonable time frame. Yeah, there you go. Darlington saying sort of 20 to 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, let me just carry on for a second. So, just to sort of summarize, we've got this idea that, we believe that this is a way to simplify this process and help reviewers to really understand the expectations of the approach and their positioning within this stage, which is still important. We want to encourage their opinions. We want to encourage them to participate. We want to reward people for participating and doing a piece of work, doing a job. But we want this to be more equitable, more predictable. And when I think if we look at data, there are a small number of reviewers that were taking up the lion's share of the rewards, and that's maybe been okay up until now. But if we're trying to think about how do we make it more distributed and more equitable and whatnot, then things really do need to change. this isn't the only scheme that has been evaluated. There's been a research team that have been looking at how do you create a sensible ranked order of proposals beyond the current schema that we had, and we've looked at a number of different alternatives, which I don't have time to double click on today, but be happy to talk about another time for sure. And then this third point is around trying to make it not worthwhile to employ civil attacks. Like, sure, you could go and do that, but for what? For $1 a review, for a smaller number, is it worthwhile for the time and effort? And what's the outcome for the voters? Well, the scoring is going to be somewhat not deprioritized, but de-emphasized in the UI. You have to go and explore it further. But this is where I want to invite Lucio to give a bit of an overview. We've got a simulation that also includes this idea of whether or not we can weight different levels of reviews to adjust the influence that they might have on scores. So to Patrick's point, if you want to create 50 different accounts and give everything 5 stars, and it's not just a financial incentive from the rewards scheme, but maybe it's more fundamental to giving that proposal a high score, is there something we can do to combat that? Lucio, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yes, thank you. I will share my screen. Just a sec. Okay, this one. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so basically,
can you make it to 125 or 150, just so we can see across the whole box? There's the view size. Yeah, perfect.
okay. So this is basically a simulation for an example proposal. We can see that there are basically 6 reviews, 4 made by a level 0 PA and 2 made by a level 1 PA. They are on purpose. I put all 5 stars from level 0 and 3, almost all 3s for all criteria from level 1 PAs. As you can see here in the last line, this score is basically the simple average, and this is what we used in the previous funds to calculate the score. So this is a simple average. This means that basically a higher number of level 0 PAs rating something 5-star obviously will have the same impact of all other reviewers, and it will basically raise the score in the same way. Then we have basically 2 different possible approaches. Is basically to apply not the simple average, but a weighted average. The first approach is to have a static weights assigned to specific levels. So for example, we can see here, we have level 0 PAs that have a weight of 1, and level 1 PAs that have a level of 2. This means that basically the impact and the influence of a level 1 PA is doubled. So in the score, you can see that it's not the same as the simple average, but the 3 here, they have a higher impact on the final outcome. And you can see here, just changing, for example, this weight, raising a bit the level 1 still weight. Obviously, it's
Lucio, can you reset your mic quickly?
sorry. Is better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is the first example. The second one is slightly different. And the idea is basically to replicate what we just saw for rewards. So imagine that we have like a pot of weights, and we reserve like, this is just example numbers, the 20% of the weight for all the reviewers are reserved for level 0 PAs. The 80% is reserved for level 1 PAs. This means that basically the single weight for each level 0 reviewer depends by the number of the level 0 reviewers that are there. So for example, here we have a 20% assigned to level 0 pot, and we have 4 reviewers, 4 level 0 reviewers. So each of them will have a 5% weight. In this, basically, this approach allow us to, for example, let's add level 0 VA here. And as you can see, the score with this pot, it's exactly the same. This is basically because we assigned a specific weight to the level 0, so it doesn't matter how many level 0 PAs we will have, they will affect the score only for 20%. So that's basically, it's just an idea, basic idea, on how we can prevent new accounts to just, I don't know, people just to create a lot of accounts just to have a big influence on the score without having any other elements.
Go for it, Hosky.
How will the current system transfer over? Are some of the people that are already veteran assessors going to be put at a certain level, or is everybody going to start in the same spot?
Yeah, good question. So we looked at it like if we were to just level set everybody, then we're not going to have any level 1s or level 2s. So if we take like an acceptance threshold approach, so if say 80% of all of your previous reviews were either good or excellent, or 70% or 90%, depending on what that threshold is, gives us an idea of how many reviewers in the pool do we have. So we've got a good idea of how many reviewers there are in the pool. So the idea would be that if you've participated in previous funds and you've done say 20 reviews previously, all of them have been passed and all of them have been included, then you should be eligible to be a level 1. But certainly what this level 0 schema is looking to do is to slow down the influence of new PAIDs that are maybe trying to just create false accounts. But to your question, yes, we do have a good idea of how many would be in, whether it's level 0, level 1, level 2.
And per se, if we already had people that had been exploiting the system, wouldn't this give them an upper hand for a bit until like 4 funds from now?
I mean, I think we'd need to be a bit more specific if there's any other sort of
if there's already people with 50 accounts that they've been using to game the system that we currently have.
Yeah, so and then they would needed to have all performed a certain number of reviews, like a threshold, and that threshold is still to be determined. This is a variable currently. So you'd have to assume then that, say that threshold is 30 reviews that have been included. Each of those 50 accounts would have had to have previously achieved 30 reviews. And exactly that, Danny. How many funds, how many reviews have they performed, and were they included or filtered out? So, to answer your question, does it give anybody an upper hand? You would have needed to done an awful lot of work to be counted within level 1. The vast majority of proposal assessors, the vast majority, have done less than 10.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good question, Nebia.
What was I gonna say? Yeah. So I don't know about how it's been going on in previous rounds. Like, what happens to a person that is caught, like, I don't know, scheming? Like, if they're flagged as, copy pasting everywhere, are they removed from the system, or how does it go? And then how is it going on now? And secondly, is the criteria for leveling up, is it fixed, or is it I don't know, leveling up and leveling down, if it's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, to answer the second question, we've got a proposal on how we think these sort of thresholds should be set, and what number of reviews would move a level 0 to a level 1, and that number could be 20, that could be 25, it could be 30. It needs to be a reasonable amount, so that people have experience, and that can be confidently trusted to do the job. And ultimately, this is just about people giving their opinion. They're not experts, so to speak. Some people are experts, of course. And then, to answer the first question, I think if we were to establish some rules of engagement and implement some sort of terms and sort of rules of the game, if you're not following the rules of the game, then you shouldn't play the game.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how was it done before? Like when a person is caught, like are they removed from the system?
Well, when we say caught, what do we mean?
As in,
No
let's say
one's been caught.
all 50 reviews are copy pasted, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Like they have multiple accounts, let's say, or in
Yeah.
that area. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there has been an instance, one instance where a particular individual was found to have illegitimate accounts, and their rewards were withheld.
But like, were those accounts closed, or are they still existing, those accounts?
I mean, we know all those assessor IDs,
Okay.
so we can very easily not have them participate.
And in general, in the old funds, we had this similarity analysis, and whenever we found exactly the same assessments coming from two accounts, there was like we obviously removed those assessments from the system, so it counted. It was like there was a pre-filtering based on these objective criteria before the VPA stage.
Thanks, Nebia. I guess I want to come back to this concept of the weighted influence, and just get some sort of general sense as to whether you think that there's any value in applying this type of approach, whether it's this simple weights approach or the POTS weights approach, or just not having any sort of influence weighting at all, as if you haven't seen the last 5 minutes of the presentation. Or maybe more to kind of open up the questioning. Do you sort of see any value in the level 0, 1, and then the level 2 sort of moderator function? Do you see how that's sort of different to how? Do you feel that it's different to how has been done up until now? Do you think it addresses any of the issues that we've sort of raised that seem to be the biggest concerns from the community?
I think it does. It's very difficult to say anything about that, to be honest, without data and, like, I don't know, practice. You need to see, like, if people find new ways to exploit it, but in general it makes sense. And yeah.
What do you think about this idea of the weightings, whether level 1s are given double the amount of influence, or whether there's like an 80-20 or some sort of shared pot where the influence is spread? Does it add a level of complexity that is unnecessary?
Yeah, like so for me personally, if I were to design like a whole voting system, I would keep it as simple as possible. I would do like minimize every sort of complexity. But I also see that you know, it's not like random. You're doing this based on things that have happened in the past, and it makes sense to some degree, but it also introduces a new layer of complexity, and every new layer of complexity that you introduce is like a new attack vector in some ways. And I don't know, to be honest. Like in my perfect world, you know, we would have a proposal, put it online, people vote, that's it. But yeah, that's not really going to happen either way. So
So, wow, okay. My network's been crap today. So much of the thing was staticky, but I think I was following. What we're trying to do with this weighted influence and scoring stuff, it makes sense. I'm having trouble even like understanding it well enough to explain it to people, right? Like, so I don't know if we need to say it differently or present it differently, but it feels complicated.
I mean, the easy way to explain it is that if you're new or you've done only 20 or less proposal reviews, you're going to share in a pot of a certain number of ADA, and the rewards distributed will be based on the level of work and volume of work that you do. Your scoring is, you know, your own sovereign opinion, and you should be providing justification as to why you're giving proposal scores. For everybody that's a level 1, you've got a fixed rate of reward per review, and the same approach applies. Your opinion is welcomed. In regards to the influence scoring, yeah, that probably needs to be sharpened in terms of how that's communicated. But the idea being is that someone that's creating many new accounts, is it fair for them to have as much influence on the scoring as someone that is, you know, seemingly bona fide, has track record, is acting in good faith?
Right.
I think, sorry, Darlington. So,
No,
so
go
if
ahead.
yeah, so it kind of comes down to the question, like, who is participating in Catalyst and what is the goal of Catalyst? And to me, if I think about, you know, the whole ADA population, basically, they're not going to participate in Catalyst voting. They're not really the target group for that. They are going to, at most, delegate their voting power in Voltaire to like some representatives. And then basically, like the goal of Catalyst is to fund as many good proposals as possible that actually benefit Cardano, right? And those proposals are most likely smaller than what Voltaire is going to vote on. So the whole Cardano population is going to vote to assess Catalyst based on the results. Like if they think, okay, it's very good that we have like these, I don't know, 500 proposals which have gotten a few 10K ADA each, whatever, and that's benefiting Cardano, and I'm not participating in that, but the system works so that the quality is seemingly high, then that's worth it. So if we optimize for the quality of proposals that go through Catalyst, then I think this is very good.
Mm-hmm.
If we optimize for decentralization, this is not good, I think. So I think, yeah, I think like from that standpoint, it's very good. And then basically, if the results are worth it, you know, the Voltaire community will say, okay, let's fund the next Catalyst round, essentially.
I mean, to maybe put into perspective as well, when we talk about this idea of decentralization, within like the modeling that we've done, and like when we look at how many reviewers participated in Fund 9, there was 984 individual assessor IDs. That's still a pretty large number of people contributing. You know, it's not like it's 5 people, but where there's certainly been some concerns is when you have all these people do the reviews and then it goes to 1 or 2 other people that are giving an opinion as to whether or not to include that review.
Yeah.
Right. Without there being some really clear objective criteria on whether to include it or not. So that's where there's an issue around centralization, right? you then start to be open to the idea that it actually only takes a small number of people to kind of come together and get organized to then have a really significant influence on what volume of reviews and opinions kind of come through, which then inform voters. And, you know, to your point, Patrick, you know, we have these conversations and do user, you know, centered design with users who are like, yeah, we think they're all experts, and we're going to vote for the ones that they think we should vote for. So yeah, I hope that kind of gives a bit more context. I would sort of suggest that it's a little more decentralized than maybe as it's perceived. And we need to try to optimize for it not becoming more centralized. Exactly what you're sort of saying, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's open to everyone, that's fine, you know. And I think it's like essentially what we're doing is we're building this like expert class of people that are assessing Catalyst, which Catalyst proposals, which would be pretty good to have, to be honest. So I like that, you know. And if that expert class is assessing shitty proposals, they're not going to get any more money from Voltaire, and that's it. So yeah.
Well, assessing them and giving them high scores and voters going with that, right? And you know, and also to that point, like if we're able to provide people that aren't necessarily experts with a seat at the table, being able to contribute, like one of the things about the assess stage is it's really sticky, right? It's quite a good reason to participate, because you know you might get some delight from contributing some ideas. You also get an incentive for participating, but maybe that incentive shouldn't be unbound, where it's to the extent where actually it's worth your while to try to gain the system, right, or to attempt to gain the system. And I'm not saying that's really widespread. There might be instances, and people can maybe speak to that better than I can. But my point is that I think that if we know what some of the limitations are today, even this isn't the panacea to the problem entirely. This maybe sort of starts to set level set and put us on the right pathway to being able to then implement things, which then be able to determine one person's attributes over someone else's, that might then present these people as subject matter experts versus others that aren't necessarily. Nebia, Hoski, to this point around the sort of incentive structure or the approach of the different levels and the weighting, have you got some inputs, some feedback?
For me, generally, I mean, to speak generally, like for me, I see Catalyst also as a very great onboarding tool for this general community, like everywhere. I know several people that have, the only reason that they have a Cardano wallet is because they wanted to become assessors, or that's how they got into like wherever they are now. So I really like that this is quite open, and also a way of mitigating the consequences of just opening up to people that maybe don't even understand Cardano much at first, but like, it gives them an opportunity to learn. The more they assess, the more they are part of the community, the more it grows. And like, okay, one brief question before that, like on the first one for level 0, so level 1s with the fixed payments, is it per challenge, like the 4% or whatever, is it, or overall the total of the whole thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the 4% budget is allocated to the whole fund, so it's not proportional to each challenge necessarily. We would imagine that there is obviously going to be some variability, except for within the fixed rates. We're trying to make the fixed rates as hard and fast as possible, but yeah, the 4% budget would be allocated across the whole fund, and then I think, you know, the amount of work being done is relative to the amount of proposals that a challenge is likely to receive based on how big the fund budget for that challenge is.
Yeah, my
Like,
concern is
please.
like let's say like when you're assessing, like, you know, for example, when I was earlier on when I was assessing, I would look at like the easy ones, you know, the ones I can just flag out or whatever. So I would have assessed a large portion of them. The big proposals, the complicated ones, they take a long time to read, so, you know, maybe put a pause on them. So with a fixed payment though, wouldn't people be incentivized to just look at those and just get as many proposals from those ones only?
Yeah, really good question. So the way that I think we talked about this, and we certainly touched on it last time. Imagine a button that you know, you can push, and then it allocates the proposal reviews to, you know, the every single proposal reviewer. And so, you know, there's an auto allocation. So you're saying, yes, I want to review proposals. I want to review proposals, and maybe this is the way I want to review proposals, and this challenge, that challenge, this challenge, that challenge, but not these ones, right? And then the allocation, once the button's pushed, is just based on those that you're happy to be part of. And that way, you know, we can predict, you know, how many reviews are going to be done. If every single review was complete, we allow for some redundancy in terms of, you know, some people won't fulfill the full amount, and that's okay. Some people might want to do way more, and so, you know, assume, you know, there's a cap of 80 reviews that you're going to get paid for at $12 a review in Ada. If you were to do 120, those extra 40 would then go within to that that level 0 bucket. So you would still be receiving an incentive reward, but that everything over and above that threshold goes into that other pool. That way, you know, you're not discounting people's appetite to do more, but you know, we can become a bit more predictable about what the costs are.
So can we say that most projects will have a similar amount of reviews? You know, some will not get like 50 reviews and one will get like 5.
Yeah, I think it's more realistic that there's probably like a handful of reviews per proposal. But yeah, the way that the auto allocation script would work is that we could set that we want no less than 3 reviews per proposal, and then that button then sorts and allocates. And then if every single person does every single review that's allocated to them, there will be 3 reviews per proposal.
Great.
But then, you know,
overall, I love it. Like,
maybe it doesn't matter whether there's 2 or whether there's 6, right? Because this is just about providing people's opinions as data to the voters. Sorry, I actually interrupted you, Nebi. What else were you going to say?
No, I'm just saying that like, because as I said earlier on, you generally use Catalyst as an onboarding tool for people around me. So that's how I tell them to do assessments if they're just coming into Cardano. So like being able to tell them like how much they'll even get paid for working on it would make that part of the job easier. It would be nice for onboarding tool to get new people in. Yeah, and I really like the whole the weighted system, not the weight, I mean the pot system. Yeah.
Okay, pot system. Cool. Darlington, really keen to get your input, and Hosky.
Hosky, yeah, to go back to the changes of how we're going to be treating reviews.
Do you want me to share? I'll get us back.
I think that is a great move. Actually, the Light Donation crew was already going to do that in the way they present reviews, as far as showing the ones that are filtered out by the VPA class, because those are opinions, and they should get out there. Yeah, the removing this proposal assessment as a position of power is a good move, because I think that's been a big point of contention for a long time. Yeah, so I think that will be well received by the community. All the reviews for sure, because even people who do reviews, who if the reviews is removed, sometimes it's confusing if it is or if it's not, and stuff like that too. So minus the whole AI thing, but yeah.
What do you think about that then? Tell me what you feel about this idea of a script to be able to spit out an idea of a flag as to whether or not it's been used by AI.
Yeah, we have to account for that. Either we're going to embrace the AI and let the AI do it, or we have to defend against it. You know, or at least try to, for it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think my perspective and position on this is that the only reason why you'd use AI as a proposal reviewer is to, you know, minimize the amount of work to be done and maximize the amount of rewards to be received, right?
right. Yeah, 100%. And part of that too, I don't know how we're gonna update the guideline, the review guideline. Because when we did our review, our assessor training, we really stressed on that guideline of, like, you know, using the prompts in there, and so that could be super powerful too for you know, having quality reviews.
Yeah, and so we haven't talked about the proposal submission form and the kind of the proposed changes to the review criteria, or the question criteria. I'd certainly like to do that next time with you guys. It's basically there, and it needs input. And you know, Danny and the team, we've obviously always put it out to the community to contribute to. Certainly in recent history anyway, and we still want to maintain that. And I think, you know, on the strength of this input that we've received from you guys today, we can, you know, start to frame some of that next efforts, I believe, on how we adapt the guidance and guidelines.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, last comment here, to see what the after town hall feedback is. I do like that we're trying something different with the PA review, assessment class, even though it seems that there's some complicated and some complex part to either simplify or do a really good job at explaining. You know, I think being able to try these things, and I think we're moving towards the modular system too, right? So we can swap out these modules if they don't work, or if we find that they're not doing the thing we thought they would do. So.
Yeah, exactly that. Danny.
Yeah, I was just going to touch upon the fact that I think the current PA guidelines from the last fund, they are about, 25 pages. Then you add another VPA guidelines on top of it, which are hitting almost another 10 pages. So you are literally like short of 40 pages, and that doesn't include like lots of ages and stuff around it. And I think the main value add of like trying this approach will eliminate, in my mind, majority of those guidelines in how we've known it to date, because they've become impossible to follow, and they arguably are a barrier to entry. You are unable to actually effectively onboard anyone when they need to learn a 40-page handbook on how to do community reviews. I think that was a nice rabbit hole that we've explored, but essentially this resets the system. And like, even to what Patrick's and others' comments earlier, it's the simpler we make it, the easier is it to understand, and also harder to game, in a sense that, you know, every time the system's complex, it creates the notions of people who understand it and those who don't. And those that do will end up exploiting it sooner or later. So I'm hoping personally that's what happens to the guidelines, that the majority of them will shrink again to some manageable form, And I think we can do a good job of communicating these different thresholds. Just like when you go on a website and you're buying a service today, you have 3 tiers of modeling, and each one basically shows you what you can actually get for different pricing models. In a similar way, like what it happens under which levels within the PA system will essentially be communicating a similar method. So definitely opportunities there, but I'm excited about cutting down the ballast from the guidelines, which in my mind it's become a huge barrier as opposed to be a crutch to help.
Yeah, and maybe another way to sort of frame it is that for those people that have been participating in this part of Catalyst for quite some time, it's been a learning process for everybody, and so documenting the guidelines in such a comprehensive fashion, the intent was to try to give a lot of examples to help new people to understand what sort of constitutes a good or what's an excellent assessment. But it's the way that the guidelines and the criteria have been sort of fashioned up until today. It's still been pretty subjective, and I don't think we can take away all of the subjectivity. Otherwise you make it too granular, and every proposal becomes a tick box exercise. And we do need to account for people's different levels of expertise and backgrounds, perspectives. And so the changes that we'll look to talk through next week, or proposed changes, are trying to give people more clarity as to what a score of a 1 looks like and a score of a 5 looks like, without being so prescriptive that, as I said, it becomes a tick box exercise. And it's ultimately intended, as Daniel was saying, these changes are intended to sort of simplify things and make it easier for people to understand, get on board with, and feel confident with the approach and the decisions that they make when they're participating. And if you have to kind of go back to a 25-page document and try and find where in that document is the answer to your question, and it not be very obvious and immediate, then maybe that guideline doesn't serve all of its purposes anymore. It's going to be a good starting point for the community to collaborate on and center around, but it certainly needs a bit of a refresh, it feels like. Hosky, keen to hear from you, sir, as to some of this.
Sure. No, I like it. I do agree with Patrick on the $12. That seems elevated. And I mean, it seems it's difficult to come to a balance of what's too much and what's not enough, because you want to get quality reviews. I would dare say for the US, let's say 20 minutes per review. Obviously, I'm being generous here. I don't think anybody takes 20 minutes to do a review. So $36 in an hour seems reasonable. But again, I think the incentive here is still to pump out as much as possible. I do like the idea that, it's diminishing returns. And I think it should be diminishing returns to begin with. If we have X amount of reviews, I think I would rather see, like, for your first 10 reviews, you get X amount. For the next X reviews, you get X amount. I think there should be a diminishing return to avoid gaming the system. So I'm okay with $12 in ADA, but I think it's too big of an incentive to just game it. Again, I'm doing the math at 3 reviews per hour, but I'm sure people are going to be trying to pump 50 to 60 an hour, because let's be real, you can game the system, and if it can be gamed, it will be gamed. So I think diminishing returns in all levels is more, or would be more beneficial, rather than just the moderation aspect of the level 2. I think we may need that in all of them. Overall, hiding the scores, the new way to weigh the scores, I like it. I think it's a good approach. If we could also take that same weighing approach for the payments and also limit the number of reviews, I think that would be something to consider. But overall, it looks better than what we have now. I mean, that's the bar that we have now. So it's little improvements do help. But overall, I think it's much better.
Really appreciate that. Okay. Darlington.
I don't appreciate you calling me a liar, Hockey. Oh, thank you very much. But no, I mean, some people took time on reviews because we had that incentive of you made like up to 3x more if the review was excellent, right? With the previous incentive structure. So as a VPA, there were reviews that a lot of thought was put into that I don't think was created within 20 minutes. And so where are we, is that, what are we doing with that in this new regime? Like what's the thinking around that?
Which part, Darlington? Like the max level?
Well, the push for excellent reviews. So and I don't have what the excellent review criteria in front of me where that we had in the previous fund. But we had that because I'm assuming we value that level, right, of review, or are we saying the $12 should garner that same level of excellence, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. So $12 is actually less than what the average reward was in previous rounds, by a reasonable amount, by a fair amount, and different to what an excellent reward would have been, right? An excellent review reward. I think what we're trying to say is that being able to determine what is good and what is excellent is really subjective. And if this was done by the VPAs, or it was done by the VPAs, and so it's a really, really small number of people that are making that judgment: is this excellent, or is this good, or should this just not be part of this? So, if we remove that influence, and we shift our perspective to people can have opinions, and they can be, and I think the other point to note was that a lot of feedback was that PAs didn't want to give critical opinions and provide negative feedback on a proposal because they were finding that negative feedback was triggering VPAs to filter out their proposals. For whatever reason, right? They didn't feel like the feedback was useful to the proposer, or some other reason and rationale for doing so. And so if we remove that level of influence that a VPA would have, and we add some some objective criteria for which the VPA or the level 2s are going to be reviewing flags. The scripts are going to do the filtering, and then the level 2s are sort of sanity checking that the scripts output makes sense. But to your point around, are we sort of trying to encourage excellence and excellent feedback? I mean, that's the sort of narrative that we can incorporate into the guidance, right? If we've got a more objective but still opinion-driven criteria and a scoring rubric, and we're asking reviewers to also provide feedback and any sort of supportive, constructive criticism, and people don't feel unconfident about giving less than glowing reviews for fear of retribution and having their work slashed, even though they're legitimate, they're not swearing, they've not copied it from the internet, they haven't used an AI, then maybe that opinion should just be counted, whether it's a professional opinion or not. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the key word to double down on there is probably the narrative part and those objective guidelines. Oh, right.
Yeah, and we could certainly we'll certainly look to double click on the proposal submission form next time if you're up for it. And
Yeah,
criteria.
yeah, I guess this will change the cohort for sure. One way or another. I wouldn't be silly enough to try to predict how it would change the assessor cohort. We're calling them community reviewers now, right? So the other thing that we had that we always had a trouble with from previous funds, we had this minimum per proposal requirement. Is that going away? I think you might have hinted at that, Chris, earlier.
The minimum? What do we mean? Sorry.
We had like a minimum. Every proposal had to have 3, I believe, 3 to 5 or something. Otherwise, we had like this second call.
Yeah, exactly that. So I understand. So a minimum number of reviews or assessments per proposal. So this somewhat harks back to, what seems to be a good quorum of people to help to inform voters, right? And we set a number of ideally 5, but could take less if need be. In this new model, there wouldn't necessarily be the need for flash rounds, nor would there be petitions if from proposers or reviewers that should I say reviewers that had their proposal reviews flagged and then discounted. So there would be, you wouldn't have those 2 stages. You wouldn't have this need for flash assessments because we haven't hit a minimum number of threshold reviews per proposal, and we wouldn't need necessarily this additional petitioning stage, because ultimately everybody's opinion, so long as you're not an AI bot, is fair game. So long as you're not being sleazy and swearing and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that flash round was also a big part of the process that was poo-pooed many times in the circles that I went into in the Cavs voting round. No, this is great. I think maybe Patrick mentioned it earlier, right? I think this will let us spend less time on the assessment stage. I guess we need a new name for that, right? The reviewing stage. It will that should reduce our overhead, so then we can put the energy into the proposal and like getting quality proposal.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that. And as I said, I don't think this is the full solution, but this level set and this sort of change of direction, I believe, is a primer for us to then be able to sensibly discuss and debate it over the coming months with a vision to start, implementing, new solutions and approaches that, we co-create together, right? And when I say co-create, it's not just about the thinking of it through, but perhaps, this becomes part of this idea of bounties or, co-development with the community to build more fit for purpose modules. Oh, that's the bit that he didn't like. Oh no, you're still there.
Oh no. Oh yeah. No, I like modules, especially the nice thing about these modules too, once they're sort of solid and seasoned and to the point where we can try to get specs out of them, then they can be interoperable and we can have different vendors, you know, supplying these modules.
Yep.
Cool. Well, this is good direction, and I'm glad it's being presented into the town hall tomorrow. Because the community really needs to know that something is happening.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's not for our it's not for a lack of desire to come out and talk about all of this background work that we've got going on. Trust me. And there's a lot of content. There's a lot of things, and I think we're all certainly conscious of not trying to overload people, but we've got to start somewhere. I think addressing the UI in the voting app around, you know, how scores prime voters, and then what this means on the other side of it with this community review work. This will be like the first step, I believe. Guys, we're running 10 minutes over. I'm conscious of not keeping you guys for any longer than you want to be here. Is there any sort of final questions or thoughts and feelings that you want to ask or add?
I'm all good on my end.
Same here.
Oh, guys, well, listen, your input and your openness to and willingness just to be open to ideas, it's really, really appreciated. I probably say this each week, but we're really grateful to have a sounding board with you folks. Lucho, anything that you want to say or?
No, not really. Nothing to that.
Useful for us for our design considerations, right?
Definitely, yes, definitely.
Yeah. And Danny, any final thoughts?
Just thank you to everyone for listening and being patient.
Cool. All right, really appreciate that, guys. Yeah, like Danny said, thanks for your patience and be willing to sort of step up with us each time.
There's the magic word of the week: patience.
Yeah, maybe that should be a theme for tomorrow. We really need to get a slide together just with that in all different languages.
Not a bad idea.
All right, gents. We'll see you tomorrow, and if not, we'll see you next time for sure.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.